You're listening to the Patient Advocacy Now podcast, presented by Greater National Advocates.
It's just gut-wrenching sometimes. Like, if it's sad and they're crying, I might cry.
Amazing how many doctors do not even want to treat somebody who has Medicaid.
Medical system is about making money.
And I said, so are you hiring more nurses, or you're just telling each nurse to work harder?
Lisa, Berry Blackstock, thank you so much for being on the Patient Advocacy Now podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you. How are you today?
Hi, John. Doing great. Over the Wednesday hump, and still lots to do this week, but my in-person appointments have been completed. I try to get those out of the way Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays so I can work in my office and have a little bit of a slower pace on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I think everybody tries to do that. Ever since COVID, we've gotten used to liking our times at home for sure. You brought up a good thing to kind of jump right off. You said your in-person appointments. So what portion or what percentage of your work is in person, and is that at the hospital or is it in an office of some sort? And then what percentage would you say is, kind of remotely done?
Okay, it's about 50-50 for me. And that was the case even before COVID. I was an avid Zoom aficionado long before COVID hit, so I didn't go through the learning curve of getting cut off and trying to identify everybody in the boxes.
Yeah.
But my advocacy is a mix of different services where I will see people in person. It can those in-person meetings can be at their home, at their office, at hospitals, at skilled nursing facilities, at end-of-life facilities. It varies. I always travel to my clients. Initially, I like to have an in-person meeting, even if the type of work that I'm doing doesn't require in-person engagement. And something like that would be medical billing negotiation, insurance appeal, making sure that because of a recent change in their health status, that all of the other planning in their life that falls under legal, financial, and insurance is all reflected to take into account that current change in someone's health. So those latter things are the types of things that I handle on Thursdays and Fridays. And to be able to focus and not have many distractions like other coworkers is really helpful because it does involve a lot of deep concentration and a lot of attention to detail. So the fewer distractions, the better quality product I'm going to be able to produce for my client.
When you mention, even if your service that you're providing doesn't really require an in-person visit, but you do it anyway, is the reasoning behind that because you want to develop that connection on a personal level, or is there some other thinking behind that?
It's a few things, but the most primary important thing to me is being able to connect with my client as a human being. There are certain things that cannot be conveyed via Zoom or telephone call. I'm working on very sensitive matters for my clients. I like them to have a good sense of who I am. I like to know who they are. I can also pick up on body language to understand if they say that they're okay, but there's a lot of twitching and moving going on. I know that they're not okay, which is perfectly normal. And I just like to be as sensitive as I can be to my client as a human being going through usually what's an incredibly stressful situation when they reach out to someone who's an advocate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is very sensitive, and body language, I think 90% of all communication is nonverbal. So being in the room with somebody and being able to pick up on those cues probably pays dividends, and being able to navigate what could be a very, very complicated situation. Speaking of which, I always like to take a step back and understand your story on how you became an advocate when I do these interviews, because I've learned that yes, there are some people who come straight from nursing or from another medical field, but that's not always, and even not even the majority of cases. And so learning what drove you to this field and what your background is, especially in your case, because your background informs you in being a kind of a different type of advocate, which is really interesting. So what brought you here? What brought you to become an advocate?
Well, without being conscious of it, I was on my path to advocacy for a very long time, working as an estate administrator in West Los Angeles. So I was working with seniors, and they all had some type of health issues or issues that needed to be monitored or addressed, whether it was just your standard aging, to having their own health issues. And there were many instances where I would work with people for such a long time that they would inevitably lose a spouse, which would be a tremendous loss and grief. And it really did affect the way that the rest of their life played out. And this was regardless of, what kind of net worth they had. What I've found in advocacy is regardless of a person's socioeconomic condition, everyone at their heart when it comes to life-changing events is human. And the ability to tap into that and know how to treat that with respect and really honor to be so close to someone is quite a privilege. So I had been working as an estate administrator since 1990 in West Los Angeles, and informally offering advocacy services to my estate clients. You wouldn't find anybody else on their professional team then or now who would be willing to accompany them to doctor's appointments, hospitalizations, oversee discharges, go through explanation of benefits or insurance denials. So I was honing my skills during that time without being conscious of it. And in 2007, I woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling of a sensation of electric currents running through the left side of my face. It was as though I had stuck my tongue in an electric socket and was being electrically shocked. And I had absolutely no idea what it was. So my first inclination was to call my dentist, which I did. My dentist said, come in. Sent me immediately to an endodontist who said there can only be one explanation of what you're encountering, and that is that your nerve in your tooth is dying and you need a root canal. So at this point, I was 47. I was 46 at the time I started experiencing symptoms. And I listened to my dentist and my endodontist. And 3 months into this, I had undergone 5 root canals, had 1 permanent teeth pulled, and the pain was persisting. And it was actually even worse than it was in the beginning. So I was pretty debilitated by this point. And I'm the kind of person who doesn't get the flu, who doesn't get headaches, really very fortunate. And I was so debilitated after several months of ongoing chronic pain, where some days I could not even get out of bed, that I researched the UCLA School of Dentistry. They have a subspecialty there still, thankfully, called the Oral Facial Pain Clinic. And I called them. This was in January of 2007, and I made an appointment. They were able to take me very early. I didn't need dental insurance because I was told it probably was a nerve disorder that emanated at my brainstem, and I was just feeling the sensation in my face and in my mouth. So within 10 days, I saw a teaching professor who was a dentist at the UCLA School of Dentistry, who told me that I didn't have any dental issues, that I had a nerve at my brainstem, my fifth cranial nerve, my trigeminal nerve, that feeds into your upper and lower jaw and your forehead, and it was being compressed by an artery pumping blood up to my brain. And with so the cranial nerves lie horizontally. Here's a side view. So I have an artery pumping against gravity blood to the up into my brain. And every time it's pumping, it is compressing the protective coating of my left trigeminal nerve. And who knows how long this went on, but it finally got to the point where the protective coating was completely worn away. And every time the nerve felt the compression of the artery, I was shocked electrically on the left side of my face.
So let me just clarify, make sure I understand. So you have an artery that pumps blood against gravity up into your brainstem, and usually there's a myelin protective sheath around the nerve, and that had been
Correct.
worn down and gone. And so as the pulsation of the blood was going up and it was rubbing against, kind of like if it was electrical, like a wire without a rubber coating.
Exactly.
And so it was giving you like an electrical pulse. And meanwhile, you had a dentist who pulled out 5 teeth or gave you 5 root canals and pulled 1 tooth unnecessarily.
Correct.
And was that pulled all in one sitting, or did you go back again and again as the pain wouldn't subside?
It was continual visits, I would say, every couple of weeks over the course of a few months, where I just was not getting any relief. Ugh. And I knew, trigeminal neuralgia, which is the name of the nerve disorder, is also known as the suicide disease, because until medical science discovered, I believe it was in the late 1940s, when they discovered that the problem was not in someone's mouth with their teeth. The problem was at the brainstem. And prior to that discovery, what would be done would be people would have all of their teeth pulled out. Wow. Literally. And they would still be experiencing pain. And then they were then put in what used to be called insane asylums, because the medical conclusion was it had to be in their mind. There was no reason that they should be feeling any pain in their mouth, because all of their teeth and all of the nerves of those teeth were gone.
So it was just written off as psychosomatic.
That's right. And that's what I was told. After I had my 5th root canal and after I had a permanent tooth pulled, I was told I needed to go see someone to talk about what was really bothering me. And now keep in mind, I'm a high altitude hiker. I'm pretty active. I don't ever get headaches. I'm a very healthy person, and there is no reason for me to want to be sick. Yeah. So I knew it was wrong. I vehemently disagreed with the dentist who knew me for a long time, as well as the endodontist who had worked in conjunction with him, recommending these root canals. And I had to find my own solution. And doing that in the midst of ongoing chronic pain, trying to run an estate administration business and be present in a marriage, I don't know how I survived it. I really don't. But that experience of misdiagnosis, then having to fight with my insurance company to pay for my out-of-network neurosurgeon, because at the time there was one well-known surgeon in Los Angeles who specialized in this type of gold standard major brain surgery. His name is Wesley King. He's an incredible neurosurgeon who really gave me my life back without causing any collateral damage at all. I was just so grateful to him, and still am, and to my diagnosing dentist at UCLA, Robert Merrill, who still works one day a week. Just amazingly skilled, empathetic doctors who are true physician healers in every sense of that word. After I won my appeal against my insurer, which was only many months after my surgery because I needed to recover, it was an extensive recovery process, did I win on appeal. So all the tens of thousands of dollars that I had to pull out of my IRA to pay for my neurosurgeon, I was able to recoup that with interest from my insurer. Dr. King told me that I was the only patient he ever had who won an appeal with an insurance company, and would I be willing to help his other patients?
Wow.
And I said, absolutely. No one should have to go through this experience that I went through. And what I discovered was there were dozens and dozens of people who came to me. Their relatives came to me. Their friends came to me. Dr. King told other physicians about me. And before I knew it, I had a client base that was so robust that there was no way that I would be able to run two businesses. So after being an estate administrator for 18 years, I decided this was years before patient advocacy was an established profession. I didn't even know that it had a name. I started helping people formally as a patient advocate. And then 2 years later, the Affordable Care Act passed, where the first significant changes began to be implemented in 2012. And that was when the floodgates for patient advocacy really opened wide, and organizations began forming. People began to understand that there were people called patient advocates who could help patients and their loved ones navigate the minefield of medical care, which has changed, as everyone knows, significantly, and which continues to change. And the reason that it continues to change is not because of the people who patients often get angry with, the frontline people who are doctors and nurses and therapists. These are not the people that are causing changes. It is the business model that has been adopted and accepted by hospitals and by insurance companies. And in large part, those changes have been allowed because of the lobbyists that they fund very handsomely. And regardless of what any politician of any party tells you, the fact is this is why our healthcare system has become as awful as it is to navigate, and it's only going to continue.
You mentioned getting angry at the frontline people. I am curious, in your own experience, were you upset at the lack of the ability to diagnose? I mean, do you still see the same dentist who gave you the 5 unnecessary root canals?
No, I do. That is not my dentist, and that is not my endodontist. Although I did go back to both of them after I recovered from my surgery to tell them exactly what had happened to me and to ask them, had they ever heard of trigeminal neuralgia? I mean, I was getting care in a pretty affluent area of Los Angeles. So you would think that physicians there would be skilled in difficult diagnoses. And if they're not, they should definitely have referrals to people who can help. So the most immediate thing that my dentist and my endodontist were worried about was that I was going to sue them. And I was, having worked with attorneys for almost 2 decades as an estate administrator, the last thing that I wanted to do was get involved in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
I was just so grateful to have my life back. The way that I looked at it was I wanted to move forward. And that was the advice that my personal attorney gave me, who is a very wise, decent attorney. And you don't hear those words associated with attorneys too often, but thankfully it does exist. And he was right. In retrospect, I look back on all of the good that my work has been able to accomplish since I went through my health crisis and my major brain surgery. And I know that he was right. And to have wasted that time being deposed and finding expert witnesses and people who would undoubtedly try to question my credibility. There's no amount of money to me that is worth living a life with purpose. And I'm very grateful that that's what my advocacy has led me to. And it is so much more rewarding than being tied up in a legal case.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes legal battles are absolutely the right thing to do, and sometimes
Correct.
they're absolutely not the right thing to do. And
Correct.
I think,
in my case, yes, in my case, because I suffered no long-term damage, it would have been very different had I suffered long-term damage.
Sure.
But I was very lucky, and I decided to take that opportunity to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I am curious, the corrective surgery, what was involved with that? Did they put in some kind of a separation between the blood vessel and the brainstem?
Well, major brain surgery is no fun. You would think that I would have been terrified at the prospect of major brain surgery, but I can honestly say that living in debilitating chronic pain was so horrifically awful that when I was being wheeled into the operating room, there was just a sense of relief that this was going to finally be addressed. And only after I went through my surgery, and a few months after that, when I was feeling a little better, did I feel brave enough to read a copy of my surgical report where I understood in detail exactly what happened to me. So, they put you under, they shave the half of your head that needs to be addressed. They put you in a head holder. They drilled a hole about the size of a quarter in the back of my left ear. I can still feel that scar every time I'm in the shower washing my hair. It's a reminder of how lucky I am to be alive without experiencing chronic pain. And after the hole was drilled, they used these separators that stretched my skin incredibly to the point where my neurosurgeon was manually able to use his hands and fingers inside my brain to work his way down from behind my ear to my brainstem underneath a microscope, and to visualize my left trigeminal nerve, the artery that was compressing it, manually lift the artery off the nerve and wrap the nerve in shredded Teflon without accidentally hitting any other nerve that was in the area. He did that. The surgery lasted about 4 hours. Once that was done, he worked his way out as gently as he worked his way in, because he didn't want to accidentally touch anything. And then I had several layers of stitching, sutures, inner incisions that dissolved. But I had my scar was about this long. It reached to the top of my neck, so I lost the strength of all of my neck muscles. I can remember having to use my elbows to prop myself up in bed in the morning because my neck was too weak to lift. But I had about 27 stitches, And after 2.5 weeks, those were removed in his office. I thought that I looked like Frankenstein from behind, but my Dr. King assured me that everything went as perfectly as it could have gone. I didn't lose any sensation on the left side of my body. Some people lose the ability for movement, to produce tears, to smell, to have sensation on the left side of their tongue. I was incredibly grateful.
Wow. It sounds like a miracle surgery procedure.
It really was. I've met people who have had that surgery who have had complications, and either the trigeminal nerve was so fragile that it broke, so they became paralyzed on one side of their face. A trigeminal neuralgia almost always affects just one side of the face. In 90% of cases, it's one side of the face. And that was horrific enough. I can't imagine what it would have felt like for me to experience it on both sides, which is what happens in about 10% of cases.
Oh. So it sounds like you were kind of, in addition to the work you were doing as an estate administrator, this really unfortunate event thrusted you straight into insurance appeals. And so is your practice now comprised of those two areas primarily, or have you kind of expanded, so it's the estate administration, kind of the life plan, the life care planning, which is unique to you. Not many advocates do that.
No, because most advocates don't have a legal background. My medical background truly has been learned at the bedside. Because of all of the hours that hundreds of hours that I spent with estate clients in the doctor's office or in the hospital. And things had progressed to the point where I was the key person for their estate, simply because I had spent so much time in person with them. In general, attorneys and financial advisors and insurance agents, they don't offer that kind of service. But I really enjoy providing a personalized service where I'm able to connect with people and really get to know them. And it's very rewarding knowing that I not only can accomplish my goal, but I know these people and I can see in real time that it makes a difference in their quality of life. So simply because I've been doing this for so long, I've been exposed to so many different kinds of advocacy and life care situations that my practice has expanded to insurance, to billing negotiation, to rehab plans. I'm also a certified hospice and palliative care counselor, which I became long before my brain surgery, just because I wanted to give back, because my father had passed away at 62 of lung cancer, and hospice was incredibly helpful to him and to my entire family. So in my father's memory, I wanted to remember something good in the midst of a very tragic loss. And I just experienced a lot at bedside, being present when doctors were there, being with people, facing the most incredible challenges that a human can ever face, that I just have had this very fortunate confluence of events and experiences that have allowed me to deeply connect with people, understand a very complicated system, and not be afraid to go at it with attorneys who are involved with healthcare.
Yeah. I mean, you have such a dynamic and diverse background that and just like you said, putting the time in across so many different areas. What population do you find yourself working with the most now?
Interestingly, I work with slightly more people who are not seniors than who are seniors.
That is surprising.
Yeah, and I think that that speaks to our healthcare system. These are people who either cannot get a proper diagnosis, such as myself. They're dismissed as psychosomatic. Look, that is a real condition. Sometimes people are, but this healthcare system today is, in my opinion, it's too easy to dismiss people, especially women, who are experiencing real complications that don't easily fit in one diagnosis box. And having gone through that myself and not being at all psychosomatic, I help a lot of people who just can't be taken seriously. I help people shop for the right type of insurance because people do not know what they're looking for. Insurance companies will only provide you with a summary of benefits. And a lot of people can't even define the difference between a deductible, a copayment, and coinsurance. I actually read insurance policies, which you have to request from insurance companies. They don't make those readily available. They are written by attorneys. They don't want people to understand what their rights are. But I also deal with disability claims. I deal with life insurance claims that have been denied improperly. My track record is 100% of having those overturned. Wow. Because I have learned how to read medical records, and insurance companies, they're in business to make money. And there's nothing wrong with making money, but you have to be fair. And my practice has shown me that it's very possible to achieve a high level of success as a professional, but do good work and treat people fairly. I also know, having been an estate administrator for some incredibly, insanely wealthy people, high-profile people, that there is such a thing as having too much money. And it can ruin your life, and it can take your focus off of what's important. And in my experience, I would say maybe 1% of the population knows how to deal with wealth. It can be a trap. And it is a trap. And most people that I see who are extremely wealthy are not living a life that I think, when it's time for them to leave this planet, are really going to feel good about the things that they spent time on.
You mentioned that women have a particularly difficult time in today's climate, not today's climate, but in the landscape that we have in the healthcare system. Why do you feel that women have a more difficult time?
I think that that's always been the case, and I think that it's because women in general, there are always exceptions, but I think women are more emotional, which I think is a good thing. I think that they are better at expressing their emotions than a lot of men. Again, not exclusively, just a generalization. Sure. And when a doctor or a clinician is changed, they are in an academic setting, and they are not dealing with emotion. They are dealing with facts. They are dealing with statistics. They are dealing with, how to treat a problem, which is a good thing, because that's what we need our doctors and our clinicians to provide. But once the emotional element tends to present itself, what I have, and it does so more with women, I find that in general, not always, but in general, it's because of the training that our healthcare professionals receive. I don't think that they've been trained to pay enough attention to that. But now, in recent healthcare change, we also have the problem where clinicians are almost always employed by a hospital as a hospitalist or by a medical group as an employee, and they are told how much time they are able to spend with their patients. And a rushed meeting doesn't allow for the type of interaction where you can delve into. I know if I were a doctor working under the conditions that most doctors have to work under today, I would find it very difficult. And because I spend a lot of time with my clients, I do have doctors who are interested in what I do. And I have lost count of how many tell me off the record that if they knew when they were going through the grueling training in medical school that they've endured, that their practice of medicine would look like what it is today. A lot of them say, I never would have become a doctor, which is really sad.
Yeah. I mean, I know that some of them are tasked with seeing an obscene amount of patients a day, which leaves them with, 8 to 15 minutes as a cap of what they can spend with a patient facing, to actually do the diagnostics.
It's not fair to the doctor. And that's why when, because it's doctors and nurses and their assistants who are the first people that you see, who my clients generally really want to throttle their necks, I try to explain to them that I'm a better intermediary if they agree to that. And I really empathize with these people on the front lines because they have not set up this business model that they're practicing in today. That is not what they signed up for.
And they're just as blindsided by the model, it sounds like, as the patients.
They don't like it. They know they don't have enough time. I was invited to be a consultant several years ago to the group of academic doctors that provide recommendations in curriculum for medical schools in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised that a group of doctors would reach out to me, but they did, and I looked at it as a new opportunity. And these doctors are, academic doctors who are not in practice, who notice, and the trend is continuing, that doctors are burning out at a much faster rate than they ever have in the past. And these doctors could not figure out what was wrong with their curriculum. What was missing? Why could they not train doctors to expect what's out there? And when they reviewed their curriculum with me, and especially their role-playing exercises, I could see that what was missing was these academic doctors had no knowledge of what a present doctor has to go through, not role-playing with a patient, but with a hospital administrator to whom they have to answer to, or to a doctor at an insurance company with whom they're engaging in a peer-to-peer review. These are the types of things that academic doctors, hopefully now they have a better knowledge of it, but they had no idea what young doctors were facing as pushback.
What is the best time for someone to reach out to seek an advocate? Are you kind of someone who suggests seeking someone out before anything ever happens? So you have
absolutely. I mean, I work with a lot of estate attorneys and financial advisors and insurance agents to try to set up a very strong life care plan for a person when they're well. If traditionally attorneys do not, consult very thoroughly, in my experience, with accountants or financial advisors and vice versa. These are people that all have their own area of expertise, and they stay in their box, and they assume that the other professionals are doing what they need to do. But what I see is none of them have any idea what type of medical insurance their clients have. And because healthcare can literally bankrupt a person today, the life care umbrella scenario that I work with has healthcare as the center spoke. Because regardless of the size of your estate, or even if you don't have an estate, if you don't have that strong spoke holding up your umbrella and understanding it, your umbrella is going to collapse. and everything else will collapse with it, including your legal planning, your accounting and tax planning, your investment planning, and all of your insurance policies. Because I spend so much time bedside with people, and again, this is about 50% of my work. The other 50% is in office, not running around working 12-hour days, because I would just drop if I did that. But I spend that time poring over insurance policies and tax returns and estate plans and last wills, and trying to piece together what a person's entire protection is for their life. Because in the event that there's a major health episode, that entire umbrella is going to be affected. And if that health care protection is not understood, and most of the time it isn't, you're going to end up with a very bad situation on your hands, where years of working and planning and being very conscious of building a secure future can completely go down the drain. People think, especially if they're wealthy, I have my estate plan, I just have Medicare, and I have my long-term plan, and everything will fall into place. Their attorneys never talk to this about them. They don't. And I think it's a huge oversight. And I think that life care planning is the most important thing that every person can do for themselves, regardless of their age.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like one of your roles is acting as the glue amongst their different advisors to make sure everybody's
Right.
on the same page and that the plan is actually cohesive and can work.
Right. I would say that I'm the handle at the bottom of the umbrella. So I am responsible for holding that umbrella. I am directly tied, and most importantly and most rewardingly, to the healthcare center spoke. But all of the ancillary spokes are legal, financial, investment, long-term care planning, everything, personal umbrella insurance. People don't understand. So many people are underinsured. Estate attorneys do not review insurance plans, but they need to. But they just don't. I can tell you they don't. I get a lot of referrals from attorneys. I would say as many attorney referrals as I get from doctors.
Wow.
And then from the public,
Right.
looking for me. But I hold that umbrella, and I hold it over my client, to protect them from, it's not just rain. I mean, it's hail, and it's sleet, and it's worse than rain. And people need to be protected. And I just don't think that people understand the full extent to which they do need to be protected today.
Lisa Berry Blackstock, you've been incredibly insightful and generous with your time. When people want to reach out to you, what's the easiest way? Should they go to your company's website, soulsherpa.net, or LinkedIn? What's the easiest and quickest way to connect with you?
My website. Although LinkedIn, I've got a pretty significant presence on LinkedIn with a lot of followers. But on my website, every page on my site lists all my contact information on the right-hand column. I offer initial courtesy consultations without any obligation that anyone hire me. I love what I do, and I'm grateful to be in a position where I can help people and affect their quality of life, as well as their loved ones. And it's just a great position to be in from what I know I was in when my face was being electrocuted.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible change, and I look forward to continuing this work and helping as many people as possible.
And even though you're based on the West Coast in California, Nevada, you fly out all over the country.
I do travel. I do travel one day a week. I have clients in many, many states. That doesn't matter to me. I just love what I do, and I feel very strongly that the type of advocacy that I provide should be available to people regardless of where they're located.
Again, thank you very much, Lisa Berry Blackstock. It's been an absolute pleasure. And again, her
Likewise,
website,
John.
Again, her website is soulsherpa.net. That's soul, SHERPA, soulsherpa.net. Thanks again.